Pogačar's a freak. You take him off out of the equation, we've got a lot more open racing.
Hi, Stuart and Cadel. Good morning and good evening. I think when we're podcasting from Australia, not too sure what time it is for anyone right now. It's still quite dark out for me. The sun hasn't. Well, not that the sun will come out at any point today, but it's still quite dark. But how are you? How are you both?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks. I'm over in Adelaide, so it's 6:30 at night over here. We've got about 7 different time zones in Australia at the moment with daylight savings, so it's really confusing to try and keep a track of what time it is in which state. But dinner time over here, so no, everything's good, thanks.
Same here. I'm in Melbourne though, 30 minutes, so it's 10 past 7 here. We had an early dinner, been a young family and so on, but no, it's all going well. And we're back in Australia, both of us, Stewie and I. But I suppose there's some things every now and then that I sort of miss about Europe. But then, of course, this is our home, and for us, it was I don't know for you, Stewie, but it was kind of a dream that I couldn't for many years. It was a dream that I couldn't even allow myself to have, to be back home and be back in Australia. And I suppose if I can say where cycling has come now, from when Stewie first went to Europe, and then a few years later I first went to Europe, it's I suppose UK has gone through a similar trajectory or progression, evolution, explosion. I don't know what the right word is there, but I look back at it in those sort of but with that perspective, and it's been an amazing journey. But happy to be back home.
Yeah, I was going to say it's nice to be back in Australia, especially now. Now we're getting into the winter in Europe. Is there a case where you're like, this is a lot better? I'm enjoying this. The weather's nice. It's great.
Well, I think before we were just paid professional athletes, so we lived over there, and you were over there for the season. If you had an injury or you broke a bone, or you didn't even consider coming back to Australia. You just had to, home was Europe, whereas where your residence was. And now you kind of, now we're back here. It's a different world, but it's just nice to be around your family and your friends. And I think those times in Europe you look back on and go, man, you just had the blinkers on, professional athlete. It was just put on the shoes every morning, get on the bike and do your job. And now we're kind of back here. It's just a different environment. You're not kind of suffocated by cycling, and we get to kind of glimpse in and glimpse out for the Tour de France and the classics and those big special occasions. But then we get to leave the circus as well and come back to a normal home, which is nice.
To add to what Stewie was saying, that we went over there, and Stewie said the blinkers on, we were focused on what we did, and in the end we went to Europe to race our bikes and be the best bike riders we could. And it sort of ended there. But sometimes when things weren't going well, you didn't have the family support structure or the network of old friends you went to school with and things. But at the same time, you didn't have those distractions which helped you focus on the job. But to be back now in Australia for me has just been fantastic. And for me, it was 26 years living based abroad. There's a few things I've had to relearn coming back, that's for sure.
And obviously, before we get into what you're up to now and your different perspectives on it, I think we'll have to do the most important thing first. Cadel, when you were chasing Andy Slack up the Galibier in 2011, was there ever a moment when you thought for a second, you know what, this might make a great scene in a one-man play, critically acclaimed, sold-out show at the Edinburgh Fringe 14 years later?
I was having a discussion today about things related to those. If I can say for myself, I was sort of in front of Stuart, I don't know if it's the right person saying in front of, but one thing I'm proud of my career was it went beyond the sport. And there were some things that came up that were just, I never expected to have a one-on-one, face-to-face conversation with the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. But thanks to what I did in sport, that I had these opportunities in life, and that was the whole journey and everything was just amazing. It took me. There's a couple of races that I want to win that I didn't, but also at the same time when I came back with my family and so on to Australia, it was really, from what the to-do list that I set up with, there wasn't many boxes unticked.
Have you seen? Obviously, I'm referring to the Connor
Connor
Dale show.
Delps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lunch on Legs.
I've only
Have
seen
you
the
seen it yet?
video footage of it. So yeah, it's how can I put this? Connor's done a fantastic job. Excuse me, I'm being a bit of a crook. He's done this yeah, amazing job, but it's also to have a because I'm the person that this play's based on, so I wouldn't say I feel at complete ease and comfort with
No,
it.
I'm
no. I think
disappointed it wasn't you in the yellow leggings doing the show though. I would have liked to have seen you do a
Well,
cameo.
I thought,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's going to be my call in the future. Cameo to your own theatrical. Yeah,
mm.
I'm sure Connor's going to pick up on this. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Let's move on to the next question.
No, I was going to say, don't give him any ideas. He might get you out. During the Australian tour, last scene, it's you come out and replace him at the end. Place goes wild. I think I maybe shouldn't say that out loud. He'll get on to that, but but Cadel, as you said, though, it is a recognition though of how your career and the career of the generation of Australian cyclists at that point, including yourself, Stuart as well. How much it resonated beyond just cycling circles in the sport, and obviously Connor himself, I've talked to him about, and he grew up within a cycling family or a sporting family, but the way he talks about it, just how much that gripped him, and that was his, like that kind of your Tour de France rides, the success you had, kind of was the big sporting moments of that decade if you were a young Australian. And so, obviously, as much as you might feel uneasy about the kind of play, it says a lot about the legacy of your career.
Yeah, yeah. I take it as all as a compliment. Just the it's probably it's a rare privilege, but also yeah, yeah, it's a bit hard to. He did a great job, so I'm very relieved. But yeah, it's not something that happens to everyone. But if I can just, I think our generation, like the Tour de France in Australia, which I think UK, Great Britain went through later, but it really started. Phil Anderson obviously had great success in the tour, but he it was before lots of TV and of course the internet and so on. But then it was Stewie going for green, followed by Robin McEwen, that really sort of, I think, really educated a lot of Australians about the tour, and then I think it just increased from there with Baden, Cookie, Brad winning the prologue, and
A
then it
little
just
golden
continued.
period there, didn't we? Like it was just year after year, everyone kind of came out and just did something incredible.
Mm.
Like Robbie kicking off with green jerseys, and then Cookie popped up and won his green jersey, and then yeah, it was just like ting ting every year. It was like, uh, Rowan's yellow jersey. It's been then Garrow's obviously backed it up after, and yeah, it's just been hit after hit, hasn't it? So although it took Australia a long time to kind of get engaged, every year we kind of backed it up and batted above our average and gave them something to cheer about. So yeah, it's been good to
Which
watch.
I see reflected also in Great Britain, where with thanks to Wigo, Froome, like then in the London Olympics, the success there, of course, and it just sort of brought another English-speaking continent into the sport.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's we'll speak about that legacy maybe a wee bit later about the current crop of Australian cyclists. But you don't think, sure, just you never think there's a potential for a stage show or a film about your Paris-Roubaix win at any point?
There's
Potential.
enough drama in it.
Yeah, I think a few maybe a documentary one day, but hopefully no theatre. But you never know, Look, whatever makes people happy. I think you could probably do a theatre show after any Peru Bay. Every year, it's got its own stories.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If there's ever a bike race suited to it, it would be Roubaix. Obviously, so to talk about what you're up to now, you're obviously the race director at the Tour Down Under. A race that you won 2 times yourself. How's that been for you?
It's been fantastic. I've got to say, you know, it's like got a really nice balance with work and life at the moment. The Tour Down Under has obviously been a huge part of my life being in my hometown. It was the first race back in '99 where my family obviously knew what I did, but my mates didn't really have a clue what I did. So to see, it was really important stepping stone for Australian cycling history, really, to be able to have an international race in Australia, and for it to be in Adelaide was gave me the occasion to kind of train a little bit harder than everyone else, and try and get some results. So yeah, of course it's great honor and a privilege to be in this position. I know it's not going to be forever, so you've just got to enjoy it while you're sitting in the hot seat. But I guess the beauty of it is, as a rider, I know kind of what should make for an exciting bike race, especially on roads that I pretty much know every corner and curve and bump in. So it's exciting to see the race evolve, to see the teams now coming down really focused. Before, it was a bit of a summer holiday. A lot of guys had come down and their legs were white, they're barely shaved legs, and it was more about just getting kilometers under their belt. Whereas now it's the racing is really intense and fast and exciting. And for the first time in 2026, we've got the Women's World Tour with mandatory participation. So we're going to see the level of the women's racing as high as it can be. So yeah, no, it's I love my job. I love doing this role. It's hard to call it a job, to be honest. It is challenging because I said I wasn't going to be away for holidays and I was going to give back to my family, and I go with Moo Cycling to the classics in April when the first school holidays are on, and I'm away for the whole month of July back at the Tour de France. So I missed the whole school holidays, and then summer. It's
Conveniently.
the busiest period of the whole year. So it hasn't kind of worked out on that front, but there are other fringe benefits. And look, just being involved in the Santos Tour Down Under in my home state, being able to live at home and do this job, it means a lot. I love it.
Hate to interrupt you guys, but we need to hear from today's sponsor, Hammerhead. If you fancy some very clever tech in your cycling life, then why not get the latest Karoo from Hammerhead? It has 5 key features that I want to highlight. So here goes. Firstly, the climber function pops up when it sees a climb coming, and you don't even need to have a map running. It just knows they're there, so you can always pace a climb well. Secondly, the UI on this thing is actually intelligent, and you can fully customize it so that only the data that matters to you is shown. Third is the visualizations of that data. You don't need to see numbers on this thing. The Karoo has loads of graphics for all sorts of metrics. Fourth, the routing on this thing is great, with a very clear yellow path and instant rerouting should you need to go off course. And finally, the battery saver mode turns the screen off, allowing you to simply enjoy your ride with only turn notifications popping up if you're following a route. That's great if you want some headspace on the bike. Back to Ryan and Cadel and Stewie.
As you mentioned, there's been lots of challenges. I think there's been lots of challenges for race organisers around the world at the minute at every level are facing challenges. But does organising the biggest bike race in Australia give you a different perspective on the sport compared to when you were a rider?
100%. Yeah, I mean, as a rider, you really have no idea what is going on behind the scenes. You just basically wake up, you eat, you fuel yourself up, you prepare, you race, and then it's recovery. That's probably the biggest thing I have noticed, and I think everyone should, during their career, get in a race car and with the organisation and just see what goes on behind the scenes. Because as Cadel knows as well, with the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race, the logistics, the working with councils, with the police forces, there's more traffic furniture, there's just more challenges on every single level. Obviously, travel costs have gone through the roof since COVID. Prices are up around 30% across everything. Currencies are different, so we're working in Australian dollars and then you're working with euros. Things are not good for us Aussies down here. But, simply finding locations which can have a world tour stage race finish isn't easy in Australia. Not every town is designed or built with deviations and sporting ovals next to them. So,
with showers.
designing the race is challenging. Having a prologue and blocking down one of our main roads. I mean, people just don't understand that in Australia. They just go, "What the heck are we blocking the roads for a bike race?" And for us, it's all good. We live inside that bubble, and we think it's a great idea because it's advertising our beautiful state and city. But the local residents do, the local businesses, you're blocking out. People. Not everyone's a cycling fan. So all I really deal with in this role is issues. You're not walking around getting your hand shaken and saying "great job, pat on the back." All you get dealt with is any concerns. You pretty much almost call yourself a firefighter. You're just putting out fires the entire event, and it's things which you can't even imagine. They're not even on your radar when you've got an international event. And there's plenty of things politically going on around the world which you can kind of understand where I'm going, that pop up on your lap, and you've got to solve these challenges, and they're not little. So you're dealing with police forces and protests and lots of different things. I think understanding the sport's great, being able to kind of pivot, and I think having that background in trying to win Tour de France's, and it's similar kind of tactics. When things go wrong, it's about keeping calm and finding a solution. But let's just say the playbook's a lot bigger and a lot fatter and a lot more stress than it ever was riding a bike. Because if you lost the race, you lost the race, and you had a discussion about it and you moved on. You had another race next week. But with this role, it's every minute is broadcast around the world. So there's a lot of stress involved. It's not all champagne and podiums, is it?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think if you asked any grassroots organizer, I think they would say the same thing. It's even fewer handshakes and champagne as well. But in terms of you mentioned about like the protests and obviously what happened this year, or at this 2025 Tour Down Under, was kind of reverberated throughout the sport. Did that make you feel like, when you look at what happened, say, at the Vuelta with the pro-Palestine protests, a lot of the kind of disruption that happened, do you think your role now as an organizer, you have a different view on what the organizers of the Vuelta were kind of the forced to act, and what they compared to
Yeah.
what if you had been a rider at the time? Because obviously a lot of riders were a bit disgruntled about stages having to be cancelled, all that type of thing. But can you now see it from that different perspective again?
I do, and I can definitely see it from both sides. And I'm not going to go into my personal opinions, because it'll probably take up the whole podcast. But I think there's certain correct plays from both teams and organisers. The organisers are bound by the UCI regulations. Okay, so we've got mandatory participation. The teams have to be invited. That's part of their licensing agreement. So we've got to go with whatever the UCI says, which makes it kind of more UCI to judge when they back it. As a race organiser, it's not quite as simple. But I also think from a team's point of view, I think when you see the disruption going on, and the magnitude, and day after day, they're not, I think everyone's probably got a different opinion on what should and shouldn't happen. And then, if you're a rider in that team, then it's obviously going to be very difficult as well, because you're just out there doing your job. Simon Clark, our good mate, is just trying to get through his last season and retire in front of his home fans in Australia. So of course you feel for the rider, you feel for the humans. Definitely not going to get into the politics of it, but as a race organizer, life becomes complicated, and definitely followed it very, very closely. But let's just hope we don't have to deal with those things in the future, because the beauty of sport is that we've never had these political motivations. That's why the Olympics is the Olympics. It's always maintained sporting prowess and focus, and I think that is what brings the world together, and that's why we love sport. So the moment politics starts playing out, and we become an easy target for any protest, no matter what it's related to, then cycling is going to suffer.
So obviously, speaking of different and changing perspectives on on cycling. You've both been returning, as Stuart, as you alluded to the classics, to the Tour de France as part of Moo Cycling's tours. What's that like, being coming back to the biggest races, and especially the Tour? A race that you're both obviously intrinsically associated with, Stewie, with your, spell in the yellow jersey, 2 stages, Cadel for winning the thing. What's that been like, coming back and seeing the race from, as you said, the other side of the fence?
Again, it was really really different. I've been with Moo Cycling for nine years now. So going back that first time, being on the other side of the fence, I didn't really feel like at ease. It was a bit of an awkward feeling. You're on the other side of the fence. You're looking at the barrier of the buses, and that's my old team bus. But you should be able to walk in and grab a coffee. But you're like, I don't want to disturb them. I don't want to. I was really mindful of not disturbing anyone, to the point where it probably took a little bit too far, because then the guys come out the bus and they go, man, come over, come and have a coffee. But also remember what it was like as a rider before a big race like Paris-Roubaix, or the first couple of stages of a Tour de France. Until you did something, you had your processes. Some people were pretty easygoing. Other, Jens would be running around signing autographs for an hour before the start. I'd like to go down, have a couple, and then just go back on the bus and kind of just be in my own thoughts. So everyone's a bit different, but going back with Moo being inside the race and being able to take people into our old world, it's a highlight. Like, I'm smiling about it now. Like, it's fun because we get to go in and then we get the hell out of there. You don't have to go on the start line and race and do all the hard stuff. You just do all the fun stuff, and it is fun. And because I'm certainly not, and Cadel's not anymore, you're not part of the furniture. You're not part of the rolling circus, going to each race. When we do arrive at the classics or the Tour de France, you genuinely haven't seen the guys and girls for a year. So it's like, hey, how you going? And then, you got these guests behind you who you're kind of just bringing it in. It's like you're going into someone's home with a group of friends, and they get introduced, and, and it's a really genuine moment, because we're having a genuine catch up, and the other people get to experience that, and gives them access to, the cycling stars. But also, just to hear the discussions. What do you got planned for today? What equipment you're using? What's the tactics? I heard it's windy. I heard this next section's crap, and you kind of having these discussions, which are natural, and people are just getting like the world's best gossip. And after you get to go to the finish line and have a cold beverage and watch the race, and hopefully meet a few of the people after that have got a result, and hear the war stories. So I get a lot of enjoyment about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But to be able to go over and go Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, 10 days in Belgium, get to have a few of my favourite beers, eat some hot chips, eat some chocolate, which I don't normally eat in Australia because it's nowhere near as good. And you just take people on this journey, I guess, and at the same time you're telling stories and introducing to your friends, which may happen to be a Fabian Cancellara or a Tom Boonen or Eddie Merckx. So, there's a lot of good moments. And the Tour de France, obviously, it is the biggest annual sporting event in the world. So to be able to take people inside that and ride on a stage and go into the team buses at the start, it's probably one of the best experiences, to be honest, because, you've got every team bus lined up, and you're basically just walking through like an F1 grid, but you're stopping, and the teams are so big. There's people you haven't seen for maybe 2 years. Tor Hushoff's there as general manager of X. Next bus, it's Fabian Cancellara at Tudor, and the next bus is another teammate. It's just it's just great fun. And it's summer in Europe, so what more could you want? You get to ride up these mountains and ride up them as fast. Cadel still rides fast. I ride slow because I have to, because I'm not as fit as him. But to be able to stop up halfway up Alpe d'Huez and just click out, and just it's unnatural. Yeah, and you're just having these little moments. It's just amazing. I love it. And to have Cadel come along on board. I mean, you're riding next to someone or you're eating next to someone that's won the bloody thing. I thought I was pretty good and I did my little bit, but to have a Tour de France champion sitting next to your brekkie or helping you, with your bike as we prepare to do a ride, it's pretty special. And
Yeah,
it's those
yeah,
little,
I can fix punches. Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you can, because I still put my hand up. Or just grab another bike. It's the easiest. But no, look, it's great. It's a great experience, and we have a lot of people come on board, and not everyone's a mad cycling enthusiast, but their partner might be, and by the end they're going, you know what, this has been a fantastic experience, and so that for me that's the biggest accolade, to get those kind of genuine reviews after.
Yeah, I just find it funny the way you mentioned about, like the F1 style grid with the buses and taking people and showing them around. One of the things I saw you, Cadel, walking through, and I can never remember. It was the start of this year's Carcassonne stage, the one of the Alaphilippe shoulder and celebration at the end. But I can never remember, what was the start town called? But that was where I saw you walking through with everyone. But that was where the buses were delayed to getting into position because of the race caravan coming through. And I think that you don't get that in F1. To be fair, you don't get the teams not being able to park up because there's a giant strawberry driving through the middle of the street.
That's one of the highlights, being at the start area and watching the caravan come through, which never gets televised, right? They might show a little clip of the caravan, but to see the size of the caravan, and we get out there on one of the experiences, and we ride behind the caravan. So you're riding in amongst it's as close as you can get to racing, being a professional cyclist. So you roll along and you get the crowds clapping at you. The only thing we haven't got is a number on our back, but everything else is exactly as it would be if you're a professional cyclist. And it's all those little moments and all those things that happen behind the scenes which really make it great.
Right. What have you noticed then, coming back, about just in general about the tour itself, but also in cycling? What have you noticed is the biggest changes in the decade or so since you both retired? How has cycling changed, and what's the biggest thing you've noticed?
Massive increase in professionalism, I'd say. Where I think in 2008, 2009, 2010, Sky was the real instigator, I think, where I was really dedicated to my job, did everything I could to altitude training, specific training, and this. But in my team, for the 2011 team, most of us went to altitude before. But then when Sky started doing this with not just it was 9 riders in the tour then. They go there with 11 riders for 9 places, and then it was 8 places, where just to be competitive, every team had to do that. And what I found was maybe what in the first 2010, maybe what the leader and 2 helpers did in terms of preparation and dedication and sacrifices for performance, um, um, was now number 8 and number 9 reserve for every team is having to do, for pretty much every team is having to do, just to be in the team. And that just pushes the whole level of the entire group to be going faster, and not just the training dedication, but the technology, tires, everything together is just, and that's where the average speeds and everything. And you have these 2 guys who just seem to be not just head and shoulders above everyone else, but head and shoulders with reserves.
For me, it's the professionalism of the entire team. Before we used to have mechanics, a director sportif, a coach, maybe a couple of riders had a coach, but you didn't have a personal coach. And it's just the science and the data-backed science. Nutrition's probably been, with CSC with Bjorn Rees, we were one of the first teams to have like a full-time chef. But it was all the kind of different seeds and all the 3 different types of oats, and we're going, what are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? And then, but we didn't really understand it. I think that was the big difference. We weren't as across it as we were tinkering on a few things, but then now it is science-based data. And obviously all that data, they're getting feedback, and the recovery is probably more important. Personally, I think we're all overtrained I definitely was. We felt bad, so we'd go and smash ourselves for another 7 hours the next day because you thought you weren't fit enough, whereas you probably just needed to have a day off your bike, which was just not a thing back then. But for me, the bikes, the aerodynamics, the changing positions, the equipment, it's just been things didn't seem to happen very much up until I retired, and then since I retired, it's like everything's just been snowballed into one. It's like the innovation has just exploded, and the speeds which we're seeing, but a lot of that's down to the aerodynamics, and it's not just again the access that Cancellara would have had access to a wind tunnel with CSC, but certainly not all of us. Whereas now everyone's doing the aerodynamics and wind testing, and everyone's got the nutrition just dialed in. I think the fuel which they're obviously digesting, I mean,
Quantity of
it's hard to
carbohydrates.
fathom kind of how much of a difference it is, but they're just constantly putting in these carbs, and all that's changed. So it's just like this perfect snowball which has just hit all at once. And in my opinion, it's probably a little bit too much at once, especially the aero positions and all that. I think that needs to be reined in a bit, because as an organizer now, all I see is people crashing and coming down a hill at 80k an hour. And we used to go 100k an hour as well, but we weren't pedaling when we're doing it. We're in the tuck and we had good skill levels because our handlebars were the same width of our shoulders, which gives you control of your bike. All this common sense stuff. But now they're tucked in like this, and they get a bump and you crash, right? So as an organizer, it's hard to watch a few of these things. But look, it's kind of the UCI doing their best, I think. And there's been a few regulation changes, quite a few for 2026 onwards. So hopefully at the end of the day, you want to see riders riding their bike and not crashing. There seems to be a phenomenal amount of crashes happening. So hopefully we can see some improvements in that area.
What do you, Cadel, what do you think of the kind of what the UCI are planning to do or are implementing now regarding these safety changes? Like there's been a lot of talk. So you mentioned a few of the reasons you think the sport's dangerous, and the narrow handlebars, the increase in aerodynamics, speeds. But obviously there's been a lot of talk about gear restrictions, and SRAM have been up in arms about the kind of trial that was supposed to be put in place. What do you think? Is there a silver bullet for making the sport safer, or is it just a series of different things?
Probably a series of effective band-aid patches in the end. Like Stewie's saying, there's been this accumulation of one percenters that have really come one after the other. My last race was in 2015. The first edition of my race was my last professional race. Now to 10 years later, and where the speeds and the levels just gone up phenomenally. In terms of safety, I think, brake lever position, handlebar width, this is all part of it. And for sure, if you can reach your brake levers, well, you're going to be able to use them more effectively. So I think that's a bit of a doesn't require much discussion. But when someone a governing body makes rules, they also have to make rules that they can police effectively. So it's useless just to make rules that you can't police effectively, because then you're only sort of in terms of sport, you're only going to you're only disadvantaging the good people, the law-abiding participants in sport. But I think it's something we all have to keep on top of a little bit. Race organisers, in the end, the rules come from the governing body, so I don't want to put all the responsibility on the UCI, but they do make the rules, so they have to keep on top of this, and we also, all of us together, though, whether it's journalists, fans, race organisers, governing bodies, we also have to keep a clear North Star. This is what the sport was. This is what the sport is today. Where do we want it in the future? And we also have to keep that firmly in mind, I think, because it's a pity to not let the sport evolve. It's a pity not to change as the world changes and evolves. But yeah, I strongly agree with Stewie. There's brake levers that you can't reach to avoid a crash. That just seems ludicrous. But if that's what you need to do to keep your contract as a competitor, that's what as an athlete, a professional athlete, that's what you do.
Do
I
you think
just
that
think
is?
every sport, motorized sport, has gear restrictions, right? Motor restrictions. You don't put a drag racing vehicle on a Formula One track because it's just going to go fast and go off the course, right? So, I do think there needs to be gear restrictions because there's more. The technology, the equipment's going, everything's just going faster and faster. But the roads, if anything, are deteriorating, and they've got more traffic furniture. So every region, every town is trying to slow traffic down, minimize traffic, minimize, safety. Speed limits are all coming down, yet cycling peloton is coming
More
in
speed humps, more
bigger and
traffic islands, more
faster and
roundabouts.
bigger than ever, with a sprinkling of inexperience. With a younger peloton, it's the perfect storm at the moment. So, I think gear restrictions is just an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah. In terms of other things that have changed in the last few years, one of the big things with like the dawning of the Pogačar era is that cycling has moved away, especially in the men's side, has moved away from uh, as from the focus on specialism, which kind of dominated your
Mm.
era, the 2000s, the 2010s. And even though, to be fair, I'm talking to two people who did cross pollinate, shall we say, across different disciplines with mountain biking, with
Yeah.
sure with you with the on the track. And obviously Cadel as well. You competed in one day classics as well, but it wasn't. It was more at that point. If you were a Grand Tour rider, you focus on Grand Tours. If you were a classics rider, you focus on classics. First of all, I kind of want to ask two points about this: is why was there such a focus on being in your lane, so to speak, when it comes to your speciality on the road, and then why has that changed in the last, especially in the last 6-7 years?
I always say it started like Indurain started the specialisation on the Tour de France in 1995, I think. And in 1990, sorry. Stu was coming over here in 95. That started the specialisation, and that
Mm.
continued until Pog. Well, everyone thought you couldn't do both, and then Pog just went and proved everyone wrong.
Yeah, I think it's just what happened. It was the goals were set. Most guys that won classics weren't Grand Tour riders. I mean, other than Eddie Merckx and a few guys along the way. But you were good at Roubaix. Johan Masseo. Then it was kind of a different. I don't know. I think it was different training, different physical attributes, whatever you want to call it. It was kind of just it just wasn't done. It was like you're a classics rider. You're a classics rider. You put all your focus in that. You had a break, then you moved on to aiming at the world championships, and you're a 1 day rider or you're a Grand Tour rider. So it's been really interesting to watch that unfold. And yeah, I don't. I look at the end of the day, Pogacar's just a freak. I think he's a one in a however many year or generation you want to say, but a guy that's rocking up to his first Paris-Roubaix and attacking a Vanderpoel specialist. I mean, you got something special going on there. What he's doing, his capacity to just be so dialed in on every race now is it's basically seeing guys just race for second. As soon as he goes, they just sit up and go, okay, I'm not going to try and follow him. I'm going to try and get on the podium. So his job's almost becoming easier. If I don't mean that disrespectfully, but the guys now that have tried to follow him just exploding and not getting that second or third. So now it's almost just let him go and then we can concentrate. So yeah, all I know is it's bloody good to watch when you're not racing. Hey, Cadel.
On the sidelines, it's pretty special. No, I'm just echoing what Stu was saying before. I'm just happy just to sit on the sidelines. And my first Tour de France that I went to after not racing was like, my first impression was that there's a lot of people who are really happy to be here. But as a rider, like Stewie said, you're so focused on what you're doing, you don't get to appreciate this. But
Mm.
I remember riding on some hot day in the middle of the tour and things weren't going as well as they should have been at the tour for me, which is every year except one. But but then we're doing like 60k an hour and the brake weren't going. I've looked across into the vineyards and I've seen a family sitting there with a picnic and their baguette and their champagne or whatever out. And then like one day I'm going to come here and do that. Come back here and do that. And that's what I get to come back and do now. And now I realise why there's so many people standing on the sides of the road having the time of their lives.
Yeah, well, obviously, as you said, the people on the side of roads enjoying themselves, but there has been a bit of a discussion, shall we say, in recent months or the last year or so on social media about Pogacar's dominance and the predictability that people are maybe seeing in the sport now, that races, and especially the biggest races, are kind of predetermined. When Pogačar's targeting them, there's a lack of suspense at the Tour.
Didn't know he was going to
Especially
go so far out the world this year.
I
That was a
think
bit unpredictable, wasn't it?
I think enjoy watching greatness. I think people are
Yeah,
very quick to get, oh, this is boring. And it's like, come on, man, he's
I
going to
totally agree.
be
Yeah,
up
well,
there with the greatest of all times. Let's enjoy watching greatness. Enjoy watching history, because this is a pretty special moment. And those battles will resurface. There'll be the next Pogačar, and a few years ago there'll be someone, probably in the junior ranks now, which is we're going to be talking about in 5 years' time, which we've never heard of. And there'll be new, new villains and superheroes. There'll be new Van Aerts, Van der Poels. You just got to enjoy this moment, honestly. Going at 100K to go and winning a world title, almost 2 years in a row. It's mind-boggling. We know how hard it is to be out there racing. Cadel won a world title. For him to,
6.
for him to do what he's doing, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-bending. As a rider, as a former rider, you kind of go far out, man. Like, yeah. So all I do is just say to everyone, just there's no rule, there's no playbook anymore. I said that about 5 years ago when I went to the Tour, when Walt Van Aert was attacking in the yellow jersey, when he's got the one of the favourites for the Tour de France behind, and Van Aert's going down the road solo, kind of going, okay, I might have ridden a few tours, but I'm not giving any more advice because I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the show. So that's what I do.
Because it's interesting, that shift, because there was that shift where 3 or 4 years ago, when Pogačar, Van der Poel, Van Aert were all like kind of really bursting onto the scene, it was such that they are ripping up the script. You don't have to race a bike in the way that people thought you could race a bike for 25 years. And there was that excitement around it, but it feels like almost like, if you look at, I think it's the last 9 monuments have all been won by either Pogačar or Van der Poel. And people are saying, "Oh, we know what's going to happen." But it's one of those ones where, do you think, as from a fan's perspective, seeing Pogačar, as you said, one of the greatest, it's kind of diminished because we're in the TV era? And whereas if we had been looking back at, say, 1972, and it was Merckx and De Vlaeminck winning all the classics, and you said, oh, he won the world championships with a 100-kilometer solo attack, everybody be saying, wasn't that epic? But because it's in the TV era, people are saying I had to sit for 2.5 hours and watch somebody we know it's going to win. Do you think
I
that's
think we're in the social
probably the issue?
media era where a
Yeah, I
lot
was
of
going
people have
to
a
say,
voice to complain, actually.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
these things that everyone's got in their hand. Everyone's just got an opinion. Everyone's getting thoughts. So before the race is already anywhere near started, we used to have a press conference where the comments were like, okay, the day before the race. Now, a month out, people are, dropping hints that he's going to ride Roubaix or do this. So there's all this build up and, predictability because of what he's done and what he's said, and, more of the times what he said, what he's not said. But, there's just so much more information available. I think everyone's just consumed and obsessed by, this instant information world we live in. They're playing it really well, I've got to say. Like, he's good at what he does. He compliments when he's beaten, whenever that does happen. But
Says he's lucky when he wins.
people are texting each other and Instagram
Always, he watched.
each other, and it's just a different world. It's a different world. Yeah.
But Stu, if I can reinforce what you said before, this is history. Our grandkids might be asking about us, and we were there to witness it, and that's, I think we should be appreciating that, because I envy someone who saw Eddie Merckx win a world title or something. I wasn't there.
Anytime you're witnessing the rainbow jersey win a bike race is a special moment in cycling history, and for us who just love this world to be able to watch that, it's the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle. Yeah. So every time he throws his arms in the air, you never know when it's going to be the last time. We said this about how many superstars in the past. This is going to go for another 3 or 5 years. It may not. So
yeah, that's very true, isn't it? Like, we look at the Ulrich's first tour win or something. How many tours is this guy going to win?
Yeah.
Obviously, from a different
play.
Yeah, well, obviously, from a different perspective as well. Bernal, that seemed to be the dawning of the Bernal era in 2019. Obviously, that's panned out for different reasons, but Ulrich's a good example as well. It's funny you say about the kind of historic element of it, the world champion winning so many races. Because not to play it back to you, Cadel, but it was a funny one as a cycling fan myself, as a teenager watching the sport, in 2009, when you won a Mendrisio, and then the next year seeing you target, winning Flash Valone, targeting classics, trying to win the Tour de France in the rainbow jersey felt really exciting and fresh, because that
Yeah.
hadn't been seen in a while.
Broke
Like
my
you were the
arm the
first.
day I took the yellow jersey at the tour,
Yeah, of course.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a little bit one of those ones in my career. I'm like, could have done so much, but anyway, it's
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it was one of those ones, especially, because at that point, I think you were the first reigning world champion
yeah. Before the
to be
Pog era,
coming
it
into
was
the
like
paper.
Le Monde and
Yeah,
Le Monde, Stephen Roach. No,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it was
It's
a real
basically,
rarity. Now Pog's made us like, oh, you win this, you win that, and you win everything.
yeah. But that's, I think, we need to kind of keep in mind that it was a rarity for so long, that you were the first in, like, since Le Mans 20 years before, to be like, oh, a world champion's got a realistic chance of winning the Tour, and and then obviously winning the year later, and it's just. But it's now just become, that's, I think that's the problem with social media as well. Attention spans are now so diminished that people are just like, oh,
Yeah,
this is boring now, rather than, if we view it in an historic sense, Pogacar is,
yeah.
is creating history. Do you think, though, in terms of, though, just with their monuments winning, that an O'Grady style victory at Roubaix is maybe needed, or something like that, just to kind of spice it up and maybe break that strangled hold of Van der Poel and Pogacar?
Guys are trying. The guys are trying, but the breakaway is just, they're averaging 53, 54K an hour for the first 2 hours. They're getting to the first section in 2 hours. Then the break finally goes, which, if you can call it a break, it'll be 5 or 10 guys. And then, then it just sits like a minute or 2 minutes. It's just that whole, back in my day, you'd give a bunch of guys 15 minutes and wheel them back in. Those days are long gone. So all that strategy is gone. They're just trying to take out that risk, but then you get 4 riders or 5 riders off the front, which we see quite often now, and especially in the Tour de France. You get your Abrahamsons and a couple of big strong boys out the front. All of a sudden, they can't reel them back in. So I think just the racing in general has just changed so significantly. We used to race hard. And we used to average 42 or 43K an hour, whatever. It's not like everything's, we're rolling along like donkeys, but the strategies just changed so much. And a lot of that's got to do with the live broadcast. It's just become such a business now. Look at the budgets of the teams, look at the salaries of the riders. Before now, there's now the elevation regulation system in play. There's so much more at stake. So, again, even back in Lance days, he'd kind of give a guy a win and a stage, in a tour or something, because everyone's scrapping around the bottom trying to get a stage here or there. Those days are gone as well, because Pog wants to probably try and win more stages than Eddie Merckx,
Yeah.
or, sorry, as Cav.
Cav.
So, and it's just that photo on the paper is just getting beamed in every paper in the world, and now it's not just the strength of that publicity shot on the newspapers, it's the iPhones. It hits every person's hand instantly around the world. That's power. It's publicity, which is money. So we've just seen a seismic shift in our sport, and a lot of that's due to the old phones that we're probably got in front of us.
It's interesting you mentioned about money, because that's one of the things I think we've also seen the dawn of a new year, in terms of, especially at the very top, like super teams, like UAE, like Visma. Obviously, Stuart, you were part of a super team of your own era, like the team that won the 2008 Tour de France. If you go through that 9-rider team, as it was, obviously Carlos Sastre won, the Slacks, yourself, Jens Voigt, Fabian Cancellara, Nicky Sorensen, Curtis Arvis, and it's like that is a powerhouse of a team, and that was probably the team at that point. How do you think that compares to what UAE and Visma can now put forward, or is it more, in terms of UAE, is it just like Pogacar would still win regardless of the team he has?
Oh, when you look at the rankings, or you look at the top 10, and they've got 3 or 4 riders in the top 10 of a Grand Tour, or there's depth. Like they've got the quality to back it up. And I mean, look at the amount of points they've won. Pogacar's almost double the points to second in UCI rankings. But you look through the field, and I think there's 4 or 5 UAE riders in the top 20, might even be more. It's pretty impressive. So obviously the depth. I just think there's more. You've obviously got your super teams, but look, again, Pogacar's a freak. You take him out of the equation, we've got a lot more open racing. But it's a hard one to say. I think that there's always going to be your super teams. We don't have salary caps or budget restraints in teams, which I'm not sure cycling's ready for that either. I think we struggle to get people involved in cycling and putting a cap on them and limiting them so they can't be the best. Probably not going to give my opinion too much on that, but it's another hot potato, just like the elevation and relegation system. Cycling's a hard sport to get 30-40 million euro involved in. So when people are doing that and then getting relegated, that's going to have consequences. So again, I think we've just got to enjoy this moment. You're always going to have superstars. You're always going to have super teams. The money in cycling now has just gone to, it's gone to good levels. The salaries are at good levels. You compare this to soccer, tennis, golf. We're still stratospheres behind in cycling. So there's no way in the world that anyone's overpaid. It's just when you see the work that all these guys and women are doing, they're underpaid, in my opinion, for what they do. So I think let's embrace the investors. And do what we can to have entertaining racing. And I think cycling's going through a real magical moment at the moment. And like I keep saying, let's enjoy the moment.
Do you think that magic moment, that golden era, has helped in terms of the reputation of the sport? Because obviously you two were, raced your careers through an era where the reputation of the sport was tarnished to the extent that you had sponsors pulling out en masse. Have you seen that shift in terms of how people perceive cycling when it regards doping and regards whether it's clean? Can you see that sponsors are more likely or more willing to get involved now compared to
so.
10,
I
15
think
years
so.
ago?
I think cycling's in a pretty good place. I think the hard work's been done in all those years since. There's obviously been some great measures put in place, which biological passports and so on, which and a bunch of rules and regulations about medications. So, I think cycling's in a really, really good, healthy place. And you can see that. You can see that by the quality of the racing and the quality of the teams and the depth of the teams. You might have a standout, but he's, like I said, a once a 50-year kind of person. What we're seeing there is pretty special. So, I think a lot of things changed for the better in cycling, and it's attracting new investments. And again, you just kind of, I think cycling's the healthiest it's probably ever been.
What do you think of Australian cycling at the moment? You alluded to it earlier, like in terms of you're part of your own kind of golden generation of Australian talent, but now we have a new Aussie invasion, as they used to say every time a band tried to make it over to the UK or America. Obviously in the men's side, Ben O'Connor, Jai Hindley, Caden Groves, and the women's side, Sarah Gigante, had a phenomenal tour this year. Grace Brown's just retired.
Yeah.
Where do you see the Australian cycling in recent years? And are you hopeful for the future?
I'm certainly hopeful, but unfortunately, maybe it's the same in the UK and just with race organisation things. Unfortunately, grassroots level, if I can be realistic, I don't want to be pessimistic, but we've had race participation competitions for young riders, juniors. They're harder to put on. There's less racing, and whether online racing Zwift can make up for this, because Jay Vine's an example of that route to come into the sport. But where I hope I've got my fingers crossed we're going to have more talents coming through, but unfortunately the traditional grassroots foundation that riders had in the past, Stewie, myself, and many others coming after us, has seemed to be diminishing, unfortunately.
I think looking at, when you look at Michael Matthews, just re-signed for another 2 years, obviously still feeling great, and, he's still up there and those big one-day races, which is great to see. But, we've got Ben O'Connor winning Queen Stage in the Tour. Chris Harper won the Queen Stage of the Giro. Jai Hindley, Michael Storer, winning mountain stages. Just in the men's side, Caden Groves obviously sprinting, but then doing that bloody breakaway he did in the Tour was phenomenal. The stalwart Simon Clark hanging up the wheels soon. I think we've had a fantastic, plus a bunch of other guys I haven't mentioned, Luke Plapp, Luke Durbridge, it just goes on and on. And as you mentioned, Grace Brown, what she did last year in Paris was phenomenal. But I think we've been, again, we've just been lucky. Like, we've got so much good talent, and you almost take it for granted that every race we go to, we're gonna, another Aussie's up there. So I think we're in a good, healthy period at the moment. A lot of that's, again, thanks to Jerry Ryan and backing the Green Edge team for all these years. The input there, just can't be underestimated, and what he's given to Australian cycling, which kind of feeds all these talents to come through and give them not only a goal and somewhere to end up, but a dream to for people to reach out and try and become part of. And yeah, Australian cycling's in a great place, and I just think it's just going to keep continuing and getting stronger and stronger. And especially on the women's side, I think the women's side, we haven't really scratched the surface yet. We've had a few superstars come in, but now, with the growth of the Women's World Tour and the growth of the women's racing, there's more opportunities. It's probably, they're only just kind of got one foot on the first step of a really big staircase to where they're going, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Absolutely.
The next few Aussies
I
come
like
through.
Stewie's optimism. Let's go with Stewie. Self-optimism.
I was going to say, Cadel, you've got I think it's maybe a joint thing. It's a bit like they're compared to the UK, where there's still these talented riders coming through, but the grassroots, maybe long term, is looking a bit, more pessimistic. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
said, I don't want to be pessimistic about it, and I think what Stewie's saying, I think, like, maybe we have less racing for junior women in Australia now, but they have Zwift. But then they also have a role model like Grace Brown or Sarah Gigante to look up to, and just also that seems to. I'm sure it was the same in the UK with Wiggins winning a tour. It's like, oh, an English guy can do this. All of a sudden, it just becomes so much more realistic that it just breaks down so many barriers of doubt, I suppose, uh, psychologically for aspiring athletes. And hopefully that's going to compensate. But yeah, I certainly agree what Stewie's saying, where the women have sort of only taken maybe the first step into tapping into their potential.
Yeah, and just talk about looking ahead again. Finally, looking ahead to the 2026 season, the tour route has just been announced lately. Cadel is someone with such a close relationship with Alpe d'Huez for good and bad reasons. What do you make of the double Alpe, shall we say, next year?
Has there ever been a stage in recent history of the tour with this 5,600 meters of climbing?
No, I think it's one of the most elevation there's
And
been, for
yeah,
many
and
decades.
in the third week after doing afterwards the previous day, it's sort of like
Brutal.
and it's not like the first week's light. Like, there's 5 days there to lose the tour, and then then you've got the third week with those peaks in it. I like the Alsace stages as a spectator, which is, I don't know Stewie knows which movie tour I'm going to be sent on, but I sort of want to go the first week, the second week, and the third week. But it's going to be an amazing tour. Great for us watching. I'm glad I'm not racing Pog to try and win it. It's really, I was starting Barcelona team time trial, the opening team time trial. It's kind of like a team lead out, really, I think. But it's also, there's a couple of days there where there's some contenders that will get some psychological blows in even, I think, in the first 5 days of the tour, and then
I think every year, every year I seem to go for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm like, my God, this is the most brutal Tour de France I've ever seen. And every year it keeps outdoing each other. And I think, the inclusion of the team's time trial, I think that's awesome. It's great to see that come back. Different format. Don't know if I'm 100%, but okay with it. But at least they got a team's time trial starting at Barcelona. It's going to be epic. And yeah, I mean, the difficulty level is always through the roof. But, what we're seeing is less sprint stages, less of those days where I think for the first time that I can recall ever seeing no breakaway, because I think it was this year when, we had that stage where no one actually attacked because they knew it was going to be a sprint. That just didn't happen in my day. So, you can see that, again, due to the power of the business, there's going to be less and less sprint opportunities, less real sprint days, and just more entertainment for TV. So, everything's got to be harder and bigger and better and faster and more gravel, and one time up the West isn't enough. They're going to, I was unfortunately in the race when we did it twice in the same day. That wasn't much fun. But, just doing it back to back again, it's just, I think it's awesome for the fans. I think, again, being able to put my other hat on and being a fan over there now, we get to see him come up to Alpe d'Huez twice. So you got like 1 million people on this mountain who are just going to be partying, and it's just a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be at the tour. It's a great time to be on a Moo tour. And, just going over and having some fun and soaking it all in.
I'll be there.
No, in terms of Cadel as well, obviously it's interesting you just mentioned gravel there, Stu. Cadel, you're kind of one of your most iconic victories in the rainbow jersey again was the gravel stage of the Strade Bianche stage of the 2010 Giro. That was like the start of that in Grand Tours, that kind of new age of different types of stages. Where do you see it yourself in terms of Grand Tour experimentation and these new kind of...
As an ex-mountain biker, I loved it. And the cobbles in the 2010 Tour as well. I love that as well, actually. Geraint Thomas's first stage win, I remember. Yeah. But for TV, for us as fans, fantastic. As a rider though, it's sort of like, well, that's just somewhere else where something can go wrong and maybe you get put out of the race. So it's very intimidating, those kinds of stages. But as a rider, I love them because I saw it as an opportunity. A lot of riders see it as a risk. But as a spectator, standing on the side of the road, I love it.
Yeah, and as a race organizer, the image of you in a mud-splattered rainbow jersey is as iconic as they come.
Pretty
so
cool.
that's the kind of things people want. But yes, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, they're the photos that they designed it all for. But yeah, it's some good memories, and we'll see more of it soon.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Pleasure to speak with you. Good to see you, Stewie, and we'll be crossing paths soon because we're only one time zone apart.
And
thanks very much
for the rest of the season. Cheers.
No worries, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.